Hello everyone and welcome to the webinar. My name is Richard Malone. I'm Chief Technology Officer and co-founder of CNX. I'll be the host of the webinar and I'll also do the primary speaking today. And also in the room with me here I have Sean Langtree and Johnny Major. They're the Valence development leads and they're here to pick up the pieces for me if anything goes horribly wrong and to help me out with the question and answer period at the end. Today's agenda will be an introductions and overview, which is basically what we're doing now. And we're also going to demonstrate the completed customer's dashboard, which I think you'll find very interesting. So I will also create the customer's dashboard from scratch. So I'll show you what the end product will look like, and then I'm going to go back and just create that dashboard from scratch again. I think you'll find that very interesting. And then I'm going to show this app running on an iPad. And then we'll have a question and answer period. And then we'll have some closing remarks, and I'll show you where to go from there and what to do next. All right, some housekeeping items. Our focus on this webinar is the Nitro query, which is a feature of the Valence framework. And I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the Valence framework because the focus is on Nitro query, but I'll show you some information about how to get more info about that near the end. We're planning on the webinar to be about an hour, but we may go longer than that. But we'll try to keep it to an hour, but try to stay on until the end because we have that cool iPad demo coming up at the end, and I think you'll find that really interesting. There will be a video replay available if you can't stay until the absolute end, or if you like the webinar and you want to show colleagues later on, we will have a video replay and we'll send you an email with that link. During the webinar, you can submit questions at any time. In the GoToWebinar control panel should be on the right side of your screen. There's a question section. You can just submit them anytime and then we'll go through them at the end. So I'm going to start with I'm going to go through this very, very quickly because I know we all want to get to the actual demonstration, but just some information about CNX Key Facts. Obviously, we're a software and professional services company. We have been in business since 1996, which is a very long time for an IT company. We have a specialty in IBM, of course, but we do work on other platforms as well. So we kind of have some cross-platform experience that we can bring to our work on IBM. Our staff is highly skilled in Sensor Technologies, which is really, that's just the fancy user interface part of Valence and what we do. We are based in Chicago, and there's a couple pictures of our office there. I like to talk about what CNX's beliefs are because all the decisions we make as a company and when we're deciding about features that go into our software, we funnel them through the lens of our beliefs. And the most important one is that we have a user experience first approach to creating business applications. And what that means is the user experience for us is the most important part of everything. You could have the cleanest database design, the biggest IBM in the world, and if the user interface or the user experience stinks, the whole thing stinks. That's our opinion. So when we talk about creating apps and how to create apps and the methodologies to use, we always go from the approach that the user experience is the first thing to consider. And apps we develop, we want them to use best practices architectures, that's obvious. And this is really this third one is really kind of an overlap with the first one and kind of obvious, but we want to explicitly state this, that we reject screen scraping as a viable long-term solution. And obviously, we use the phrase long-term because there could be short-term cases where screen scraping is appropriate, but we say as a long-term solution, that doesn't work. This point is also one of my favorites. I like to talk about this one. The approach we want to take is that our IBM apps must be as good or better than anything on any platform. Our goal is not to just be and to create something better than a green screen. And also we want to use industry standard development practices. We like to look at how development is done on other systems and then we bring that to the IBMI development and try to use the core strengths of the IBMI as well. So, modernization challenges. What are you faced with when you talk about modernization or creating creating modern applications? The first question you have to ask yourself is, how do you create IBMI apps with the best user experience? We've said that that's our primary goal and one of our core beliefs, but how do you do it? Also then, once you create those apps, how do you securely deploy those apps to the end users? And then how do you handle all the different browsers and as well as all the smartphones and tablets? That is a little overwhelming, right? And then if you can do all those first three things, can you do it within your budget? And then can you do it within your lifetime, right? Obviously, all of us on this webinar are smart enough to figure out the points, but can you do it in a reasonable time, and can you do it within a reasonable budget? Those are the challenges. So Valence, we have the Valence framework to try to meet those challenges, and I want to talk a little bit about the evolution of Valence over time. It first debuted Valence 1 in 2008, and all the development done in Valence at that time was manual. You had to learn how to do that. You had to learn how to be a good designer. You had to learn how to lay out the user interface and develop everything manually. Over time, customers said, Valence is fabulous. I love the user interface. It's magnificent. But we need to be able to do things faster and less of a learning curve. So with Valence 2, we released AutoCode, which helped customers develop inquiry applications and file maintenance applications with no programming, just by going through a wizard. And that was very popular. Then in 2011, Valence 3 came out, and we added more things to help developers and end users. We had a source editor, we had a file editor, and then for the first time we introduced query as well, which we call Nitro Query. That was very basic. I have in parentheses there, it's basic. So the features of the query were pretty basic at that point. Then in 2014 with Valence 4, we released a redesigned UI with Valence, and we also integrated it with Sencha Architect. So you had a GUI designer at that point. So not all the coding was manual. You could lay out the user interface with Sencha Architect. Now in 2016, with Valence 5, we updated all the features of Valence, but we rewrote the Nitro query specifically. And you can do more with it today than ever before. In fact, we feel like a lot of basic inquiry, dashboard applications, and even updating some files now can all be done through query. When we work with customers to develop applications now, we first ask ourselves, can this be done with Nitro Query? And before we say we have to develop an application just manually as a development team. So Nitro Query at a glance. Well, it's a full-blown query and dashboard creation for IBMI with no programming required. Okay. It's coded in native RPG on the server side with a Valence user interface. Now, you're not doing programming. The point of this is that Nitro Query itself and Valence in general is native to the IBMI. The parts of it that are getting database records and things like that are all coded in RPG. Nitro Query is not some tool that was created on another platform and then shoehorned into the IBMI. It's specifically designed for it. Okay. So with it, obviously, you can easily create complex queries with multiple charts, lists, forms, and all kinds of other components. You can then define behaviors, as we call them, with buttons and other actions to help the user navigate through those different components. And then through the Valence portal, you can securely deploy those queries and apps through that, and then you have the full solution. So now at this point, I'm going to switch out of the presentation, and I'm going to show you a completed customer's dashboard that we've done with Nitro Query. Okay, so I'm on a CNX development system, and the first icon here, we put it right at the top. I'm logged into the Valence portal. These are all the apps here, and I just put it right here at the top. This is the finished query called Customers. And when we first go into it, what we see is we have a column chart here, which is the top 5 customers by their sales numbers. This is all sample data, by the way, not real data. the top 10 states where we have in terms of the number of customers, and then we have the top countries for the number of customers here at the bottom. And then if we click this listing button, we can get a full listing of customers, all right? And we can, totally integrated with this is the ability to download. So I can click this download button. And I'll just click that now so you can see we can download that to Excel. And when I click on it, bring it right in Excel. I'm running on a Mac, so this might look a little bit different on your Windows system, but it's just loading right into the Mac version of Excel. Close out of that. On this listing, we also added the ability to filter on the country. So like say I wanted to just see customers in the Netherlands, for example. Now I'm just limited by the Netherlands. And now it says the list is filtered, and I can take that off from here. And then I also have some row actions. If I click this row menu button here, I can look at details, which will pop up all the columns in the file over here. And then I can also click a map to show a Google map of the location. And also we added a fancy feature here to click the marker to show the weather in that zip code. And I'm going to show you how to do all this as part of the webinar. So we'll close that. Let's see. Lastly, we also added the ability to see orders. So customer orders for that customer. We click there, and now we have a CNX Corporation orders. And then we can go back to the listing. I think that covers everything. This is an example of an edit grid, so I can also click edit to edit the record. Okay? And that's fully controllable. You can turn that editing feature off. And so that's what we're trying to accomplish. Let me go back to the dashboard. So we'll start out by creating this main view with all these charts, and then I'll build on it from there. And I think you'll find the process very interesting. Okay, so now I'm going to switch to a different system that does not have this query defined. This is a CNX test system. And to create that customer's dashboard app, I'm going to go into the Nitro query. This is where a developer or a smart user that knew a lot about the database could go and create the query. So I'm going to start out just by creating what are called data sources. So for query, I have to define, okay, where is my data located? What are the files? What columns do I want from each of the files, et cetera. And then I'll create graphical widgets from those, on top of those. So let's just go through the process and you'll see how it works. So I'm going to add a new data source. And you can see up here in the top, it's kind of like a wizard. It's going to walk me through each step. So we have a demo customer master file called demo CMask on this system. So we'll add that file. And then I don't have any file joinings to do because I only have one file. The columns I'm going to choose for this are the count and the country. Okay. And then I'm going to group that by the country, and then I'm going to order that by the country in descending order. Okay. So I'm going to preview so this is just defining the data source. So what this is doing for me is saying I am going, I got the order by incorrect. I actually wanted to order it by the count. Sorry. So good, you see how I can update this. If you make a mistake, you just go back and fix it. What I'm trying to do is get the top countries where the count is the highest. So I want to start by the highest count of number of countries in the file and go in descending order. So I noticed I had a problem in the preview, now I just went back and fixed it. So the USA is the top country with 88 customers, Germany is the second with 31, etc. So this database or data source is complete. So I'm going to save it. And I'll just call this top countries. And I'll give it a description of webinar so I can easily find all the different things that are defined for this webinar. I'll save that. Okay, now here's the data source that I just created. And then what I'm going to do is go up here and just type in webinar. So now it's searching for all the data sources and widgets that have that in the description. So that's all I'm going to see to make it easier for me. So on this data source, I'm now going to create a widget, which is a graphical component over the data. So this is going to be a bar chart. And I'll give the bar chart a title of top countries. Okay. And the data field, now it's just looking in the data source and saying, okay, what columns do I have available in the data source? So the data field will be the count, and then the label for each count will be the country. And I'm going to limit the results to the top 5, just so that my bars look reasonable. And you can see as I make changes over here, I started changing that. As I make changes over here on the left, this preview is automatically updating itself after a second or two. So I like to see grid lines on my chart, so you can see it's kind of like a plain background. So when I click this grid option, now you'll see this grid lines come up on the back. I'm going to also add some padding. You can see this this goes off the end over here, so I'm just going to add a little bit of padding around it. Maybe 18 pixels is what I wanted. And so now you can see it looks nice and clean all around. So that looks good to me, so I'm going to save this. And I'll call that top countries bar chart. I'll make that part of the webinar as well. I'm going to copy that so I can paste it in easier in subsequent screens. All right, so now when I save that, now I see I have one data source called top countries. And now I have a graphical widget linked to that data source called Top Countries Bar Chart. If I wanted to come back here and just get a preview of that, I could just click Preview. And that's what that looks like. All right. So this is the first widget that's going to be part of the main view of our customer's dashboard. But we have 2 more of these to create. So I'm going to go through that a little bit quicker. And the next one I'll do is the top states. So we're going to go back to the demo CMAS file again. And I'm going to go into columns, and I'll choose the count, and I want, clicked the wrong one. I want the state this time. And then I'm going to go to the group by, and since I chose a count, it's automatically wanting to group by the state. And I'm going to order that by the count in descending order. And let me look at the preview. Okay. So right away when I look at the preview, I see I have a little bit of a problem here because a lot of the customer records do not have a state. Those are probably international customers without, a U.S. state. And I don't want to show that in my chart. So what I'll do is I'll filter that record out. So go back to filters, and then I will go to state, and I'll say where state is not equal to blank. And add that. So now that's a filter that's defined. I can add multiple filters or take that away and manage them from here. So now I'll go back to preview, and now I can see that record is gone. All right, and I can look at this and see that the count is going in descending order. So we'll save that, and we'll call that top states, description of webinar. Okay, so now I have a top states data source, and now we'll create a widget from that. This time I'm going to go for a pie chart. My data field will be the count again. A label field will be the state. And I'll limit the results to the top 10. You can see the pie is starting to come together now. I think it looks better if it has a little bit of donut, which is a hole in the middle. So I'm going to give it an 18-pixel donut hole. And you can see some of the states are not showing on the outside, so I'm going to add some padding to give that room. Okay, now it looks pretty good. So I'm going to save that. And we'll call that top states pie chart. Okay, so now I have 2 widgets, and I'll create the last one for the main view. Data source again is demo CMAS. Now for my top, this one is going to be for the top customers. And how we're going to define the top customers for this dashboard is going to be the top customers in total dollar amount of orders that they have open. So for that, we need to join into the orders file. We also have a demo order file. So now this data source has two files, so we'll have to join them somehow. So we'll add a joining. So again here, the from field that I'm joining from is the customer number, so we're just going to join them by customer number, and the to field is customer number. So that's how they're joined, all right? And then the columns I need from this are the customer number, the customer name, and now I want to have the total, but I don't have that available in my orders file. I have the quantity and I have the amount per item, so I'm going to have to add a calculated column. So we'll add a calculation, and we'll call that, the field name will be total, give that a label of total. And so it's going to be the quantity times the amount, so I'll just use this search to find the fields quicker. So it's going to be quantity times the amount per item. And then I also want to summarize that. So what this is if you're familiar with SQL syntax, this is how exactly you would define this field in SQL, right? You're just summarizing all of the multiplication of these two fields. Right? And so this could be anything. If you can do it in SQL, you can do it here. So we'll save that. So now I have this calculated column. And now I want to group by the customer number, right, and the customer name, and order by the total in descending order. Right? So what this should do, if I did all this right, is give me the top 5 customers in descending total dollar amount order. Okay? So the top one is Christian Dior, the next one is Volkswagen, etc. So this data source looks good. So we'll save that. All right, now here it is, and now I'll create a widget on that. And we're going to go for a column widget. Yep. All right, column widget, okay. Top customers, the data field will be the total. And we'll have the name of the customer. And we'll limit the results to the top 5. Okay, that looks pretty good. Oh, let me add my grid. And we'll add some padding. Okay, I think that looks good. So let's save that. Okay, so we have 3 widgets defined, 3 data sources defined with all 3 widgets. Now here's where it gets really cool, because now that I have these widgets defined, I can go into my canvas and lay these out in a query. So now I'm going to go into this queries section and create a new query. So the first thing that I want to do, I have a blank workspace right now. There's nothing in the query. So the first thing I'll do is add a widget, and I'm going to limit this to ones I've put in a description of webinar for. So there's my 3 widgets. So I'm just going to put all 3 of them on there. That's the first one. And I'll go and add another one. Then I'll go and add another one. Now, it doesn't look that great because they're just laid out top to bottom by default. So what I want is the top customers to be in the upper left. So let me bring that one up. And you just use these arrows to move them around. So top customers I want to be in the upper left. See that? And the top states I want to be over here, so we'll bring that up. And the top countries I want to be at the bottom. Okay. Let me just make sure that looks right. Top customers, top states, top countries. Yes, this is exactly how I want it. All right, so now our query title bar, I'll just say customers because this is a customer's dashboard, and you'll see that puts a title bar at the top here. All right. Now, I like to have more consistent spacing around these, so I can mess around with the padding a little bit. Generally speaking, I like to have any outer edges to have 16 pixels of padding, and then try to maintain that look and feel throughout the app. So any outside edges of the app I'll put to 16, and anywhere it borders an existing widget I'll put as 8. So the combined, when it's bordering another widget, the 8 and 8 will be 16 and it'll look consistent. So that's that one. I'll try and just do this really quick here. So we'll make this one 16 because that's on an outer edge. 16, 8 and 8. Then on this one we'll do 8 and 16. And 16 on the bottom and the left. Okay, I think that looks good. And so now, now that we're up to this point, I'm ready to save the query for the first time and try to run it. And then we'll come back and add more features to it as we go. So I'm going to click Save. And by default, it's just taking the app bar title and putting that in there as the name. That's fine. And when it adds it to the portal, it can add it to a category on the portal by default. And I'm going to choose just to put it in the webinar category that I created so it shows at the top of the list. Also, this is really important. It's saying, do I want to deploy this to the desktop and mobile? Because what it'll do is it'll automatically create everything necessary for the portal to run on mobile devices and on the desktop. And yes, for this purpose, I want to deploy to both. So I'm going to click Save. Okay, now if I go back to the portal's launchpad, I should see that I have a customer's dashboard here now. And I cross my fingers and hope it runs. Of course it's going to run. There we go. Okay, so, you know, that took about, I don't know, 15 minutes. If I wasn't explaining it as I was going, it probably would take, 5 minutes to do all that, really, with no programming. And all the files that I chose, were demo files included with Valence, but those could be any files on your system. If the file's already back there and created, you can put in any file names you want that already exists in your database. Okay, so let's move on, and we will add a listing. If you remember from the completed app, I had a button up here called Listing, and then I was able to see a list of customers. So let's go back. There's a shortcut in the portal that allows me to click this and just go back to any other open app. So Nitro Query is still open. And I'm going to go back to the data sources and create another data source for the All Customers list. So that's Demo CMast again, Customer Master. Then I'm going to go to Columns, and I'm just going to choose the customer number, customer name, address, city, state, zip, and country. Okay. Now I'm going to just save that because that's, so let me preview it. That's really all I need to do. The default ordering will be by customer number. That's totally fine. So I'll just hit Save. And I'll call that Customers. And we'll give it a description of webinar. Save that. Okay. And there it is here. So we'll create a widget from that data source. And this time I'm going to do an edit grid. I could just do a display grid if I want, but I want to show you that you can create an edit grid as well that would allow the user to edit records. So the columns I'm going to choose are the customer number, the customer name, the city, and the country, just to show on the initial list. All right. And let's see, I'm going to go into Properties. And I'm going to just say the title is Customers. No, I don't think I want a title on this, do I? No. Okay, I'll leave the title up that because this would be cleaner. I'm going to just say stripe the rows, give this a little markup here, and show column lines. See that? Okay. And I'm going to go back here and just try to set some widths here. I have full control over the widths of these columns. And just to make this look nicer, I'm going to set the customer number as 90 pixels wide. And then any number here under 10 is assumed to be a flex, which is kind of a proportional use of the remaining space on the page, which is really nice because when the users resize their browser, it dynamically adjusts. So I'm going to put a flex of 3 here, and a flex of 2 on this one, and a flex of 1 on the country. Okay, so now when I go here, we can see that it looks a little bit nicer because I've set the widths on the columns. Okay, excellent. All right, now on this one as well, I want to have a download feature. So if you want to put a download on any grid, it's really just as simple as clicking this checkbox. And if you want to make the downloaded file a specific file name, you can put that in here. I just would just say customers, so it comes down as customers.xlsx. And since this is an edit grid, these are all of my edit options. I can say which fields are required, and when you're adding a record, which ones to include, and when editing records, which ones to include. I'm not going to allow adding a record on this one, but for editing, we'll say, I'll just say the customer number and the customer name are read-only. So we'll see them on the screen, but they won't be able to change them. But we'll be able to edit any of the other records or fields. There we go. And that's it, so we'll save that. Oh, we'll allow deleted records as well. So that if you want to allow the user to delete records, you can check that box. Save. And then we'll call this customers edit grid. Okay, so our widget here is created. Now we'll go back to query and we'll add this into our query. So far, we only added widgets to the main section. Okay, so the query can have multiple sections. So I'm going to add a new one, and I'm going to call this the listing section. So that gives you basically another blank canvas to work with. So I can add a widget to that canvas. And this is the new one, customers edit grid. Okay, so there it is. And now, if I was to just save this and run the query again, all I would see is this, and I would have no way of getting to the listing. Okay, so I have to add a button to be able to go to that. Okay. Oh, you know what? I just noticed as I brought this into the canvas that my padding is inconsistent. If I go to the main, you can see I added 16 pixels of padding there. And then in the listing, I think it's defaulting to 8. We might change that to 16 since I think it looks better. So I'm just going to go and put the 16 padding all around. Okay, so now you can see as I transition between these, it has a consistent amount of padding. Excellent. All right, so what I was saying is that when I launch this query now, I won't have any way to get to the listing. So we have this thing called behaviors, and it allows you to put user controls on the query so that the users can navigate through it and have a workflow. So we'll go in there for the first time, and it's giving me a list of things I can do at the application level, and it's also giving me the opportunity to add behaviors to any of the widgets that are already part of the query. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go to the application level and add a button. And now I get to define what this button is going to do. Now there's a lot of different things you can do here, but I'm just going to do a simple one called listing that will bring me to the listing section. And what I want to do when I click that listing button is I can perform actions against everything that's defined in the app. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide everything that's in the main section, okay? And then I'm going to show listing. So you just can rotate through these different things just by clicking multiple times. So we'll hide everything on the main and show everything in the listing. All right. So let me save that. See. Now, before I go any further, I'm just going to go in and make sure that works. So I'm back to the customer's query here. And a really quick way of relaunching this is just to right-click somewhere in it and reload frame. This works in Google Chrome nicely. So it'll just relaunch the app. Now I can see I have my listing button here. And when I click it, there's my listing. So it hid everything that was on the main section and showed the listing. Now, I have a problem because the listing button didn't go away, and now I have no way of getting back to dashboard. As I click this, it just keeps reloading the listing, and I have no way to get back to the main. So let's fix that now. So we'll go back to the query, let it load, go back into behaviors, and I'll add another button called dashboard. That'll bring me back to the dashboard. I'll say that I want that to be initially hidden. And then when the user clicks on it, we will hide the listing and we'll show everything on the main again. All right. Now, also on the dashboard button, we want to show the listing button again when we go. All right. And we'll save that. Save. Now I'm going to relaunch this customer's query a bunch of times here just to make sure that each step that we go through is working properly. So now when I go into the listing, so I'm not showing the dashboard, and I didn't save it properly. Okay, let me go check and see what I did. I was expecting a dashboard button to come up there. So maybe my team here can help me tell me what I did wrong. Okay, so go into the listing button. Okay, so when I click the listing button, I want to show the dashboard button, correct? And hide the listing button. All right, excellent. And when I go into the dashboard button, okay, so I updated the dashboard button and didn't do the listing button. Okay, but you can see now it's really easy because when you test the thing out, you can see what you did wrong and you can go back and just adjust it. All right, so when I go into listing, okay, now it's perfect. Now I see the listing, and then if I want to go back to the dashboard, I click dashboard, and now I can rotate back and forth between the two different views. Okay, perfect. Now the next thing I want to show you is, if you remember from the completed app, when I was in the listing, I had the ability to limit the listing by the country. So I could say, you know, just choose to show me all the customers in the Netherlands, for example. So I'll go back to query, and the first thing I need to do that, because I want the user to be able to choose from a list, I'm going to define a data source for all the different countries that are in the demo CMAST file. So we'll add a data source for that, and that's from demo CMAST, obviously. And the columns that I'll choose are country, okay. And then what I want from this are distinct countries. So I'm only going to get one record for every country that exists in the file. And then let me just look at the preview on that. Okay, so I think that's working, but I'd rather have it sorted by the country name. So we'll order it by the country. Okay, let me look at the preview again. Okay, there we go. So now we have our nice country list sorted alphabetically by country name. So we'll save that, and we'll just call it countries. Okay, now in our customers edit grid, there's this section called filters. All right. Now, I want to go and filter it by country. So I'll select the country field, and then I'm going to link that, and these are my linkage options. So I'm going to link it to the country's data source. So the first option is choose your data source, countries. Okay, and then I only have one field in that data source, so it's easy. The display field that I want to show the user is the country, and then the value field is the country. So we'll save that. And then I also like I like it to be on a pop-up window. I think that looks best when you choose filters. It'll come up in kind of a little pop-up window. All right, I think that looks good. So I'll save that. That's updating the customer's edit grid definition. And let's go back and run the customer's dashboard again. Okay, now when I go into listing, I should have a filters option. Yes, and there it is. So when I click filters, it'll give me the drop down for the data source, and there if I choose Netherlands and apply that, now my list is limited to just countries in the Netherlands. And you can see up here it'll tell you that this list is filtered, and I can just click this little X right here to remove the filter if I want to get rid of it. And now I'm back to the full list again. Okay, that's that one. Now, if you remember from the completed app, I had the ability to click on this row menu, and I had some options in here. I could see details on the customer, and I could also get a map. And let me show you how easy that is. So go back to query, and we're going to add a form widget to the customer's data source. So we'll create a new widget, and we'll choose a display form. Okay, and I'll choose all fields. And I think that looks good. I don't have to change any of the properties or anything. I'm just going to save it. And we'll call it customers form. Okay, so now you can see this is the first time you can see I can have multiple widgets on the same data source. So that customer's data source has more than one widget on it now. And I'm going to create even a third one for the map. It's one of my favorites. Okay, so I will just, for the map, the definition for the map, I have to tell it what fields from the data source that I want to use to pass to the Google Map tool to do the mapping. And here I'm going to choose just the address and the city and the state, and that'll put them in here. But this can be anything you want. It could just be a zip code, it could be a name, it could be, you know, how it's basically has the same capability as if you would go into Google Maps. All right, so I think that's it on that, and I'll save this, and we'll say customers map. Save that. All right, excellent. Now I have these three widgets. Now, I want to go in and add these to the query. So right now, I want to go into the listing section, and when I take the action to show the map or the form, I want them to show, you know, right next to this list. So what I'm going to do is just add the widgets. Let me limit the list here. First one, I'll add the form, and then I'll add the map. I'm going to rearrange these so that they're up next to each other. Okay. Now I want the main listing here to have more weight to it. So one of the first things I'm going to do is go in here into the settings for this widget, and I'm going to give it a width of 2, which would give it a flex of 2, meaning it has a weight of 2, and these others have a weight of 1 based on the open space available. All right. So that'll look nicer when I get into a full screen mode here. And I'm going to edit some of the paddings. You can see the paddings don't make too much sense. There's less space here than there is here. So I'm going to click this to edit this, and we'll give this a top padding of 16, and right of 16, bottom 16. And we'll put this one at 0 because this widget already has a 16 padding on it. All right. I'll do the same with the other one. Okay, I think I got all that done. Now let me just go back and look at the settings for each one of these again. This one here, because this is only going to come up when we need it, we want it to be initially hidden, and we want the user to be able to close it. If I say it's closable, it'll put a little X on there to let the user dismiss it. And we'll do the same thing with the map. We'll say it's initially hidden and that it is closable. All right. So we'll save all of that. Now, I have to go back in here and edit behaviors now. So because if I was to just run the query again, you would just see the listing, but the form and the map are initially hidden. So we need to have some behavior logic to be able to show them. Okay. So we're going to do a little bit more complex behavior management here. So on the customer's edit grid, which is on the listing, this is the widget that shows the main listing. We're going to add a row menu. Okay, and that will allow us to add functions to that row menu. So when I click on a record, I can do options against that particular record. So there's a row menu on that grid. And now on that row menu, we'll add a button. And we'll use the filter widget function for that button. And now here's how I define that. So we'll call the button details, because we want this particular button to show the details form. So we'll call it details. And then what we want it to do is update the customer's form, okay? And then the field relationship for that is we're going to link that by customer number. So you can see there's a field relationship, and you can have multiple relationships, but this one's easy. It's just by customer number. And then we also have the ability to update the widget's title. So when the form comes in, I can do things like this is CNX's details, right? So I can specify any field name in the data source. So that'll give me the customer's name and then details. So at the top it'll say CNX details or whatever customer name I picked. Now, also, I have to say which widgets to hide and show. Let's see. And I don't think I need to do anything else with this one because it automatically defaults to auto show. All right. But the map, if the map is shown, I can say to hide the map. Because like when I choose one of these options, if the map is already shown, I want to switch to the form and vice versa. So we'll save that. So now the details button is created. Now I'll create another button on the row for the mapping. And this will be very similar. So we'll call this one map. And we'll update the customer's map with that. The field relationship is going to be the same. It's linked by customer number. And we'll update the title. Same thing as before, F1 CNAME. And we'll say location. So like when it comes up on the map, the top will say CNX Corporation location, for example. And then here, we will hide the form and it will show the map then at that point. All right. So now we have added those two buttons. I also want to go back to the dashboard button and say, since we have more widgets on the screen now, when I go back to dashboards, I want to make sure that I'm hiding those. So on the dashboard button, I'll hide the form and the map. Okay. And then also when I go back to the listing, I will hide the form and the map automatically. So let's save that and test it all out. Now, I did a lot of steps there, so let's see if it all works. Okay, so now let me go to the listing. Now, if I did this right, when I click the row menu, I should have an option for details. And there's the details in the form. So it's automatically linking that. And then also, if I click map, I should get the map. And there it is. And then see how this updated the title. Based upon my definition, I said take the customer name and then add the word location to the end of it. And there's the X if I want to dismiss it. Right? And that's it. It works. Let me just make sure when I go back to dashboard, things still look good. If I have the map open when I go back to dashboard, it should dismiss the map. Yep, that all looks fine. All right. Now, so you remember when I had the map up on the demonstration query, when I clicked this marker, it would open up the weather. And let me show you how easy that is to do. Let me go back to query. Now go into behaviors. And then I'll find the map widget. And I'll add a marker click. So this is what function I'm going to do when the user clicks on the marker. I'm going to actually launch an app. All right. And we have an app called Weather. So that's just another app in the Valence system here. And then what information I want to pass to that weather app is just a zip code. So we can just do the weather by zip code. So save that. And we'll relaunch the app. And we'll go back here. I'll just call CNX Corporation's location back up. And the weather in Chicago today is 88 degrees. All right, excellent. So now the last thing that I have to do to this application is, you remember in the example app, I was able to choose to look at the orders. And I think I can do this pretty quickly. I know we're probably going to go over time, but I think this is an important one to show. So we'll just go ahead and do it, and hopefully everybody can stay on. So we'll go back to data sources and widgets. And I'm going to add a data source for the orders file. So this is demo order is the file. And I'll go and choose the columns. I'm going to take the order number, the order date, the order quantity, the item, and the amount. All right. And that's pretty much all I need to do. I'll just preview that to make sure it looks good. Perfect. We'll save that. Okay, so from that orders data source, I'm going to create a widget. And this is just going to be a view grid, so we'll just show a list. I'll choose all the fields. I can fix up the alignments here. So order number, since that's numeric, I'll right justify that. Maybe I'll center the date. Since this is a quantity, I'll right justify that. And the amount. Okay. And then for the amount, since that's $1, I'll choose to format that as money. So you can see here, that'll come up formatted as currency. And then the flexes, I'm just going to put all to 1, just so that each column is equally weighted in width. And that's what she looks like. All right. So let's see, in the properties, I'll just change a couple things here. We'll do stripe rows, and we'll do column lines. I think that looks nice. And we'll take off the paging, because we can just show all of the orders. We know that the database is not that big, but you could put paging on there if you want. Okay, so let's save that. And we'll just call it orders view grid. Okay, now we'll go back to the query definition, and we'll add now a third section. The third section will be called orders. Okay, and what do we want to put in there? We'll just do orders view grid. Okay, I will fix the margins, make it all 16 for the padding, I'm sorry. Okay. That should be initially hidden. No, it doesn't matter since it's in its own section. Okay. All right, and we'll save this. Oh, I think instead of saving it, I'll go right into the behaviors. Yeah. So now I got a bunch of behaviors to put in here. All right. So we'll add an orders behavior to the customer edit grid. So when we're in the customer edit grid, we just put in one for details and map. Now we'll do another one. For orders. All right. And we're going to update the orders widget, orders view grid. And the field relationship again is just customer number to customer number. Widget title will update. And we'll say orders, so it'll be the customer's name and the word orders. And for hide and show widgets, I'm going to hide the dashboard button on this one. Oh, hide dashboard button. Show the listing button so I can get back to the listing. And we'll hide all in the listing section. Because I'm coming from the listing, so I want to switch to the orders view. All right. I'm going to save that and demonstrate that, and then I'll come back and change one last thing. So we'll go back to listing, and there it is, orders. Perfect. So the orders are just for CNX Corporation orders. And when I click that, it goes back to listing. And see, this is an example where I didn't hide the orders when I clicked the button. So let's go back and fix that. Go into behaviors. Go into dashboard. Hide if I go back to the dashboard, and hide if I go back to the listing when I click those buttons. Okay, so while I'm in here, I also want to do one last thing, is I want to show you how to add an action to a chart. So I want to go into the top customers chart. So I want you to have the ability to click on one of the bars in the column, or click on one of the columns and get the orders for that. So we'll add a button. Nope, I'm sorry. Is that right? Oh, add a chart click, I'm sorry. Filter the widget. All right. So we're going to update the orders view grid. We'll link by customer number. Update the widget title as usual. And we'll show the button to get back to the dashboard. We'll hide the listing button, and we'll hide everything that's on the main screen. Because we're coming from the main in this case, because that's where the widget exists. And we'll save all this. And I think this should be it if it works. Okay, so let's test this out. Here's my top customers. If I click Volkswagen, now I see Volkswagen's orders. Okay, click this, I can go back to the dashboard. Perfect. Let's go back to the listing and test this one more time. Orders, back to listing. Okay, everything is working perfectly. So that's it. We've just created that. It took maybe about 50 minutes to go through. And like I said, I could probably do it without explaining each thing. That could probably be done in like 15 minutes or so. You know, the key is to know your database. You don't have to be a developer to do this, obviously. If you know your database, you can kind of get through it pretty easily. All right. So now, what I want to do is just show you that. Well, first of all, this will run in any of the browsers, any of the latest browsers. So Internet Explorer, Firefox, Safari, Google, Chrome. You don't have to worry about any cross-browser problems. But what the Nitro query allows you to do is also run this on mobile devices. And it's not just the same app squeezed onto the mobile screen. It actually will render differently and use different components. And the developer doesn't have to do anything. It just works. So what I'm going to do is just minimize the screen here. And I'm going to call up. I have a physical iPad in front of me here. And let me just make sure this is working. Yeah. Okay, I have a physical iPad in front of me, and I'm just sharing it to my Mac screen here so you can see it. Okay, so you can see there's a thing called Valence Portal, right? That's available on the Apple App Store, and there's also a version for Android you can get on Google Play. So if I launch the portal, and because when I first created that query, I said I also wanted to be able to deploy that to mobile, it's now rendering here for me to use in the mobile portal. So I'll click on the customer's query. Again, I'd like to point out that this is not just re-rendering the same thing that we were looking at in the desktop Chrome browser. It's actually using different components that are optimized for mobile, and everything is touch compatible. So I'm going to touch the Volkswagen column in the top customers section, and you can see I've moved to the listing. But now when I click on a record in the listing, oh, I can't do that from there. Hang on, let me go back to the dashboard. I'm going to click the listing button, and then I'll click customer number 8, CNX Corporation, and you can see how at the bottom all the options, so instead of being that little row menu that comes up, which is appropriate for a mouse on a desktop, it's not appropriate for mobile. I need touch buttons. So here, if I click map, the mapping component will come up, and then instead of having an X in the upper left-hand corner that might be hard to touch, I have a close button in the lower right. Right? So this is basically using all the mobile components. I can click on filters, same thing that I could do on the desktop. And again, this is something that the developer doesn't need to think about. It just, the Nitro query will re-render it appropriately. Okay? All right, so there's that. And then, all right, so that's that. I think we'll go into the question and answer period now. Give me a second to switch my GoToWebinar control panel around so I can see the questions. Give us one moment. Okay, our first question is, Nitro query is also in version 4. Can you tell us what functions that aren't in version 4 but are in version 5? I think I'll let
I can answer that.
Sean can answer that. Okay, go ahead, Sean.
I guess one would be the ability to have application sections. 2 would be calculated columns, buttons, behaviors, the ability to filter widgets. It's really entirely different from version 4, I'd say. So hopefully that answered your question. But I mean, if you want like a specific list, I'm sure that's something we can get you.
Okay, thanks, Sean. The next question is, can you do an SQL data source with a join? Yeah, we demonstrated that.
Yep.
So yes, you can definitely do that. Next question is, can we change the view to be more bold? I see light coloring in the apps for ext6.
Yeah, each query is fully themable. There's actually a CSS file that loads that's blank that's meant just for you to develop, just for you to modify the CSS for.
Okay, not a question, but a comment. I'm new to Valence, and this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. That's pretty awesome. Thank you for that. Okay. Next question is, can you give an example of pre-execution program function on the data source? Well, we don't have time to do that as part of this webinar. You probably noticed on the screen when we were creating data sources, there was a pre-execution function. Maybe Sean, if you want to just describe that in 30 seconds or less.
Yeah, it's a back-end program that it'll call that you may want to have into prepared data. Like let's suppose you wanted to move data to a work file and have the data source off of that file.
The next question is, how do I pass a parameter to a file? I'm not sure I understand that one. I think that might mean how do you limit or select that there's some filtering functions which we showed.
Yeah, we can follow up with you on that one.
Okay, we can follow up with you.
Clear. Yeah.
Somebody asks, did CNX write Nitro query? The answer to that is yes. It is 100% written by CNX with Valence. It's basically a
Valence application.
A Valence application. Yeah, that writes applications. So yeah, like I was saying at the beginning of the webinar, it is not something that was developed off the IBM platform and then shoehorned in. It is written specifically by CNX for IBM I. The next question is the map feature calling a web service, and how does NitroQuery know how to display the map? You guys want to take that one?
Yeah, we can take that. So that is just, if you installed Valence with NitroQuery, you would just go and get a free key for Google Maps and place that in NitroQuery. It'll ask you if you're attempting to use the map and don't have a key, and then it just uses the Google Maps API to render it. So that you don't need to do anything else other than that.
Okay, I think that is it. That is all the questions. Let me close by, well, thank you for all the questions, those of you who asked a question. I want to finish by just giving you guys some follow-ups on what you could possibly do next. And the most important thing you can do is go to CNX's website. And if you want to try out NitroQuery or anything else in Valence or what you saw today, you can just go to cnxcorp.com, go to Downloads, and you can download Valence Framework 5 and install it to your IBM I. The installation is very simple, and if you have any problems, you can always contact CNX, and we'll help you out. And then if you're totally new to Valence and you've never seen it before, I recommend you go to the videos section here and just start at the top and start watching more of the videos. It'll be more generic stuff about Valence, the portal and installation and all of that. And that is it. We went only 10 minutes over. Thank you, everybody who stayed until the very end. I'm just going to call up my personal information here in case anybody wants to contact me directly. I would be happy to receive your emails. And thank you for joining the webinar today. And I'll leave this up for just a few minutes before I shut down the webinar. Thank you very much.